Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy. Joining me again, Master of Human Design, Hartwell. Good morning, Hartwell.
Good morning, Kris. Good
We
morning,
have some
everyone.
company there. Right on. So this morning we're talking about the Codon Ring of Destiny, which includes gates 34 and 43. What can you tell us about the Ring of Destiny besides the cat waving to you this morning?
Well, let's just dive in, Kris. I think rather than summarizing it beforehand, we summarize it afterhand. But yeah, that's our topic, the Ring of Destiny. There's only two. And we start with the 34. Now, the 34 is an interesting gate. It's called the Gate of Power in Human Design. Here we have the journey from force to majesty via the way of strength. Its amino acid is asparagine and the sacral plexus. This is in the sacral, the 34. And
I always think you're going to say asparagus.
this is very primal. It's very primal. Basically, this is the 34 is our prime. It's the pure evolutionary force whose prime directive is our survival of the fittest. It's very resistant to outside influence. And the idea here is at the level of the shadow, force is the shadow. When we are in a vibration of fear, we try things. Try is an interesting word in this context because I'm going to try to do this. There's an energy of force to the concept of trying something. We try to, I'll try to fix this. I'll force it to work. I'll try and get this door open. It's kind of, when we're trying something, we are trying to do something outside of the natural course of things. And in the name of force, we do tremendously horrendous things because there's no self-awareness in the 34. Like, it's simply a primal force. So at the level of the shadow, it can bulldoze over people and be very bullying. But at the level of the gift, what it functions as this. When you're operating at the level of the gift with Gene Key 34, and you're not in that energy of fear anymore, then you have the ability to act in harmony with natural forces, with natural law. And people demonstrating this gift attract our attention and praise of others because they look like this, a pure creative manifestation of the life force. And so this is where we see, this is probably the most basic of all archetypes, the archetype of the heroine. And we admire it. It's the power, it's the charisma we see in Olympic athletes, for instance. We see it in people who have a strong connection to sport and dance. It's a very physical archetype. And to those who have it, again, it's not self-aware. It's like, oh, I'm not trying to look like a hero. I'm not trying to be this charismatic person. It's simply an outgrowth of who they are. Does that make sense?
It sounds like flow. Yeah, it just sounds like flow. Like they're just connected, so they flow with everything. Is kind of how everything looks effortless and seamless when you watch them. Yeah.
Well, and it just has this. It draws the attention. It draws the
Mm-hmm.
attention. There is a primary need for display. It's like, heroes and heroines, they attract our attention even though they're not trying. It just mesmerizes us. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's the right word, but it's
Well,
very
because you
compelling.
aspire. Yeah, you
Yeah.
aspire to be like that, right?
And yet they don't. They just are. It's like watching a wild
Yep.
animal that's full of
Yeah,
power. It's like they're not
exactly.
saying, "Oh, I'm going to be also full of power." It's a very it's yeah. So at the city, this shows up as majesty, and majesty in a sense is not a state of being. It's the truth of all nature, expressing it in its highest state. And
Mm-hmm.
the idea of man as God comes
Yeah.
from this gene key. The idea that, we can evolve to that sense of naturalness. And from this city have
Mm-hmm.
arisen all the physical practices that aim at higher consciousness, the martial arts, Tai Chi, yoga, asana, mudras. They all
Mm-hmm.
arise from this gene key because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, to be expressing at that level is to discover it's automatically move in powerful ways that shift energy, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And at this level, the genetic fear of survival is transcended.
Mm-hmm.
You might even say that this is where spirit fully enters into matter and imbues it with divinity. And
Yeah.
there's that fluidity you were talking about. You were talking about
Yeah.
flow. Life
Yeah.
becomes fully fluid and efficient.
Mm-hmm. And you just trust that it moves from spirit into material and back, right? Like there's this exchange happening. Beautiful.
It's just so instinctive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even messed with much by thought because it's so not self-aware. It just
Mm-hmm.
is this quality.
Yeah.
Um, the other one, Gene Key 43,
Mm-hmm.
um, this is all about breakthrough. It's a journey from deafness to epiphany via the way of insight. This is the inner ear. And the 43 is in the ajna, pointing towards the throat in the middle. And what we see here with the shadow of deafness is that there are these natural processes that unfold within us. And there's this natural sense of truth as well. What is good for us? What is right for us?
Mm-hmm.
But fear, which always operates at the shadow level, is very noisy. And our fear blocks us from being able to hear the voice of truth inside of us. So we're deaf to
Mm-hmm.
that voice. That's where the deafness comes from. It's also
It,
useful to, yeah.
oh, I was just going to say, you had written that you have Gene Key 43, but I believe I do too. So that makes it quite interesting. Okay, we'll talk about it later. Sorry, it just came
Um,
to me.
there's more than one way to be deaf, Kris, but yeah, deafness is specifically linked with this gate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's also useful to remember that we could broadly say at the shadow level, this is about survival. At the gift level, it's about service to the whole. And at
Because
the civic level, life is about surrender.
yeah, because when we talked about this before, the thing that I remembered about the gate of deafness or was that you had stated that it serves a positive purpose when that person is in alignment with who and what they're meant to be, so that people can't drag them off track,
Correct.
is what I
So at the level
remember
of the
you were
gift,
saying. So
yeah, at the level
mhm,
of gift, which is at the level of the gift, which is insight. Um,
mhm,
now we've risen up out of the vibration of fear, and then
mhm,
that deafness then becomes an ally now.
mhm,
Because we have the ability to stop listening to the status quo, to the
mhm,
conditioning of the world around us. And, this is where the rebel is born.
mhm.
The spirit of the rebel arises in gate 43.
That
Um,
makes sense.
yeah. The first
Yeah.
law of the rebel is to listen to your inner voice no matter the consequences and not be
Mhm,
swayed by the voices of the people around you. And so in
mhm,
this gate, in this gene key, immense creativity begins to rise up and call us in service to the whole. And it's
mhm,
interesting, he makes a distinction, Rudd does, between service to the whole and service to society. And he says they're not the
mhm,
same thing. So service to the whole
mhm.
of life. Um,
Yeah.
only
Which would
when you
include
truly,
everything.
yes, the whole of
That,
life, yeah.
yeah.
Only when you trust your inner voice can you really does breakthrough happen. And breakthrough is more than just,
Mhm,
true breakthroughs actually transform us on an energetic level. So this
mhm,
flooding of insight comes to us at the level of the gift. Satori is the word in Japanese for those moments, those aha moments.
mhm,
And at the level of the city, we have epiphany. Um,
mhm,
and this in Greek, epiphany means inner manifestation. Of course, epiphany is a strong word in the Christian tradition, but it really
mhm.
shows that this is a universal experience. Um,
Yeah.
Epiphany is an explosion in the human heart, an openness and acceptance of others, and a divine spirit of friendliness that is at the core of human beings. It's a quotation from Richard Rudd. And so at this level, we play the mystic play the fool in mystical ways.
Mhm,
We realize that the joke has always been us on what we've always been searching for is what we already were. It's that kind of realization. And
it,
so it's pretty sweet.
yeah, it's interesting. Oh, go ahead. So one of the other things that came to me as you were speaking about the city of this was, um, when you're deaf to what everybody else is saying, there's a thing about doing the right thing. So, like being righteous. So, even though the whole world is telling you, oh, it's okay to cheat or it's okay to lie, that person is going to sit there who has this gate and go, no, I know what's right. I know what's in alignment. So
Mm.
there seems to be like that kind of flavor to it for me too. Like you're doing the righteous thing by not letting somebody knock you off course or tell you what you should think or feel or do, right?
Yes. Well, one of the thing that pops into my mind as an example from my own experience, since I have this gate, it's part of my
Mm-hmm.
Venus sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember a time in elementary school. This was like grade 1, 2, or 3, and we were talking about space or something, and we were talking about sound, and clearly the teacher was setting us up in some sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she was telling us, we were talking about the propagation of sound, and we were talking about space, and she says, "Who thinks there's sound in space?" And, so she asked the whole class at this, if you think there's sound in space, raise your hand or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow none of the class got it. They all thought there was sound in space. And it's like, from what she had been telling us, clearly space, in space there's no sound because there's no atmosphere to propagate the um, you know, there's no atmosphere to propagate sound. So everybody, the entire class answered wrong. And I says, well, no, there's no sound in space. And it was a very clear moment for me because it's like I was standing against the entire class, even though the
Mm-hmm.
teacher set us up for the right answer.
Yeah.
I was the only one. And it was like, oh, this is kind of weird. But it was a very powerful moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels very much like the 43.
Yeah.
I, yeah.
I can get that. And it's the same thing. Like I've had those experiences in especially business, right? Or anytime I'm dealing in a group and there's this extreme pressure because everybody wants things a certain way. And you're like, well, no, that's not right. And you can feel it. Like you can feel everybody's eyes on you and going, why aren't you just agreeing with us? And it's like, because it's not right. Like there's just this feeling of it's not right. So I cannot agree with you. So yeah, it's a different experience being that, like it's almost like being a little black sheep of the family kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, and it can, yeah, it does feel rebellious in a way too,
Mm-hmm.
that,
Yeah.
that rebel energy.
Yeah, it does.
So, why it's called the Ring of Destiny, and there's only
Mm-hmm.
these two. In esoteric literature, there's two great forces in the universe that are talked about. There's the force of
Mm-hmm.
evolution, which is like, it's a human urge for us to become more, to become bigger, to become more developed. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what evolution is. But then, many spiritual traditions also talk about the desire of the divine to become more fully incarnated into the world of matter, and in a sense to transform matter by more deeply involving into it. So there's the
Mm-hmm.
evolve, which is to expand and to become more. And there's an involution, which is
Mm-hmm.
about moving more deeply into matter
Mm-hmm.
to bring God more deeply into matter, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so these two forces, evolution, and involution, are are related to these two gene keys. So 34 is the evolution,
Mm-hmm.
and the involution energy is the 43. So that's why it's called the Ring of Destiny, because these two great forces are, um, we have, in a sense, as humans, we have access to both of these energies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Here's another quotation from someone. Life is a mystery in which chance and love are dancing together.
Mm-hmm.
The more you allow love, the more chance appears to work in your favor. So, the ring of destiny, it is our destiny to evolve, and it is perhaps destiny also for spirit to involve more deeply into matter.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's what these are about.
that's amazing. So, is there anything else you want to tell us to sum things up, or do you want to move on to telling us what's next week?
I don't know that I have anything else to say at the moment. Do you, about any of these that we've looked at today?
No, I think you've just about covered it. So,
Well, the next codon ring is our last one. We have
oh,
covered all of them. We
so
have been through all of the 64, or we will have in
mhm,
a couple of weeks. The next one is called the Ring of Light,
mhm,
and it has 5 different gene keys that make it up. So it'll take us a
mhm,
couple weeks to go through that.
mhm,
Gate 5, Gate 9, Gate 11, and 26
right.
are the make up the Ring of Light.
Wow, it's hard to believe that we've made our way through all of them. So, With that, if anybody would like to go deeper into their charts, you can give us a call here, 587-596-3333, and set up an appointment to meet with Hartwell here, and he'd be happy to dive deeper into each of your charts with you. We have another mini carnival coming up, which you can sample any four of the 10 or any four 10-minute readings. And it's going to be on the 21st of July from 4 to 7. There's only 20 tickets available, so get your tickets as soon as you can if that's something that interests you. But with that, we're going to sign off and say God bless and take care, and we'll see you next week and dive into the Ring of Light.